Okay, we're getting ready to cast this hand now. We're going to do a two-part plaster mold, and to prep it, I actually painted the fingernails with a clear nail polish. I want the nails to be as shiny and smooth as possible so they look like nails, and it takes away all the little tiny imperfections from the clay, and I'm hoping that will help to give it a more realistic nail when I cast it. So I'm taking the clay. This is WED Clay, W-E-D clay. I'm going to make a base out of the clay first so that I have something to set the hand on for casting. This is just loose. I just want to have something that it will brace it. The fingers I'm going to have floating. They're not going to be touching this at all. They're going to be floating over it so when it sits there. For this process, you can use other types of water-based clays. This is recommended because it really doesn't dry out very fast. It's got some kind of chemicals in it that keeps it from drying out. So now it's sitting in a good position for me, so I can keep it nice and flat, and the fingers are not touching at all. Okay, so I kind of know where I want to go. I'm just going to put dots across here with a marker, and this will show you where my seam line is going to begin throughout the whole entire hand. Like I said, for the fingers, I'm actually going to just go across here like this. And then I will run it up the hand like this, through the middle of the thumb. And I need to avoid that thumbnail. I don't want to have a seam going through it. So I'm going to go across here like this. Those dots are going to be my seam line. And I put the clay on kind of loose right now, mainly because I really don't need to worry about the seam line until I get it to that point. Alright, now that I've got the hand pretty much covered in the right amount. I mean, I'm going to add a little here and there as I go, but in general I've got it covered pretty well. So now I just need to fine tune it. Now I need to get critical with my space right next to my fingers. So what I'm doing is I'm going to add a little fine thing of clay, and then I'm going to just press it. That way it has a nice even line on both sides that I can actually blend pretty well. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the clay in, trying to make it as narrow as I can, and when I put it in, then I press it so that it stops right at the finger and it doesn't build up on each side of it. It's just going right next to it, just like that. So now I have a really easy seam line. I mean, I could fight it. I could sit there and use my sculpting tools to make it go as close as I can, but press it right up to it just like that. Then you don't have to worry about messing up your clay sculpt. So now for right here, I'll do the same thing. A nice thin piece of clay, take my finger and gently push it in there till it spreads and touches each side, and then we're done. I'll use my tool because it's really fine in there, and I'll press it. Now for this edge here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a roll of clay, flatten it out a little bit, lean it up near there, press it till it touches the clay, press it till it touches the clay hand, just like that, and just keep going around. And I'll build this up here so it all matches. This is how you do really clean seam lines. So then it's nice and even. And then I'll take more clay and I'll build this part up here so that it will just keep going all the way to the edge. Now that you got your hand pretty much blocked out, all your seams pretty close, now I want you to take some water. I got this water in this cup here and this soft brush, and I'm going to dip it, but then I'm going to take some of the water off it because I don't want it too runny. And now I'm going to go along my edges, and I'm going to try and clean up all these edges here so that they are flush with my clay sculpture. And at the same time, I'm also kind of pushing that clay down. This water-based clay is still really soft. That's why we use WED Clay, because it's soft and it stays soft for a while. Like I say, you can use other water-based clays if you want to, and they work just fine. Just get it right next to that line, best you can. And then I'll go through afterward and I'll take my brush and I'll wipe off the clay residue that's left on my sculpture. Cleaning my brush off as I go, because then I can go like this and kind of clean off the clay if I want to as I go, just so I know that I've got a really clean edge. I'm going again across here, and I'm kind of pushing it a little bit just so I can fill in all those little gaps that are next to it. Then I take my clay, then I take my brush and I wipe it away a little bit. Just make sure that it's clean. Keep wiping my brush because then I want to get that water out of there too. And that gives me a nice clean edge. And you can just keep going all the way around your whole sculpture. Now we have our seam line cut in really nice. We're going to start working on the keys to it and also building the walls. To build keys, I'm going to take my clay and I'm going to take my clay cutter and I'm going to cut off some pieces for it. Like that. Then we're going to take this piece here and we're going to cut it into sections so that we can use them as keys. There's the 3 keys, and then we're going to take the rest of this clay, cover this because it dries out and we don't want it to do that. So now we take these keys and I'm going to cut them into little wedges. I'm going to cut a wedge just like that, and then I'm going to also cut a wedge on this side here like this. And then this will be our key. So this will go against the wall, and then this will be the key for the plaster mold. And we take these keys and we put along the edge just like this. Then our wall will be here, and we'll have a nice key for our plaster mold, and then the other negative piece. Okay, now that we got the keys in place, now we're going to build a wall. But so I don't waste a lot of clay, I'm going to take these little blocks here of wood. These are 1x4s. Sometimes I use 2x4s, it depends on, what I'm doing. So, and I also, you want to secure these on there. So you have to take some hot glue, squirt some hot glue out to press the wood down. This just keeps the wood from slipping when I start adding clay to it. Now that my wood blocks are in place, I can start adding my wall. And the wall will be about, 2 inches high, maybe 3. It has to be at least 2 inches high over this piece here, the sculpture, so that I can have a decent thickness in my plaster. So now I'm going to start taking clay and building my walls. Instead of doing a full pour mold, I'm going to do a regular type of mold that I like to do, which is more of a rounder mold. So I'm going to take some of this clay off here so that it's fairly equal all the way around. And then it's going to make my mold a little bit lighter and easier to work with. So now my mold is still kind of high, but it's a little more even to work with, and it's gonna be a lot safer too, because when you have that much plaster, that weight on that clay, so then I don't have to build little retaining walls. I can actually make it slightly rounded, and it will be actually a nicer and cleaner mold. You take your brush and you just paint the plaster on it. You're trying to paint the plaster deep into all of your detail. And especially like here around, right by where the fingers are and stuff, I'm trying to make sure that I don't have any air pockets right there. No air pockets around your seams. Just a really clean splash coat is what they call it. So right now I'm just adding a nice layer of plaster to the entire surface of my splash coat now. Okay, the mold is set. It's not hard yet, it's not getting hot yet, but it's hard enough that I can touch it and work with it. First thing I like to do before I start adding my burlap is to coat the entire mold with a nice layer of plaster, just so I know that I don't have any air bubbles and I have good contact with the original plaster, with the wet plaster. The plaster I'm putting on is about the same as the splash coat. It looks a little thicker, but I think it's not too bad. And now I just coat the plaster bandage really well with the plaster, and then you lay it on. And you want to push it out so you know that there aren't no air bubbles underneath it. I'll put 2 layers of bandages on it, just so that I know that it's got a good strong foundation. Like I say, push it out, make sure that you don't have any air bubbles underneath it. This burlap, it's not the loose wool that you see in Hollywood. I have a hard time finding it without ordering it like special. This is actually a potato bag that my wife found and gave me a bunch of them somewhere. She bought them cheap, so I was able to cut them up and use them for this purpose. It's got a little bit of a looseness to it, but it's not really loose. So it's a very strong burlap. This is the kind of mold you make also when you're doing foam latex. You do a burlap or some kind of a reinforcement in it. So I've got all my burlap now. Now I'm going to coat it with the rest of my plaster. Now I'm going to let the plaster set for a little bit so it gets a little thicker, and then I'll add the rest of the top of this and make a nice little round mound. And then I can let it set and then flip it over and do the other side. The mold is still soft, but not too soft. This is kind of the time I like to pull the sides off of it so that I can start shaping it and kind of cleaning it up a little bit. I don't recommend it if you're not used to doing it that way, but if you're like me and you just like to clean your mold up while it's still soft without having to grind it and stuff, this is the option that you have. This is what you can do. This is where I like to take my tool and trim it away and clean it up while it's still pliable, while it's still setting. See, if this was already set, I couldn't take this tiny little kidney knife and do this. Now you can take your rasp if you want and just clean up even more before it gets too set, before it sets too much. Okay, now that I've trimmed it, I can feel it getting hot, so it's setting, and I'll let it go ahead and cure, and then once it's cured, I'll flip it over and I'll cast the other side, and then one hand will be done.